I brought a prop with me to kind of preface my remarks this morning. They're a fact of life if you live in downtown Seabright. Without fail, I put them in the back of my car every October and every March because I expect that there are some days, if there's a nor'easter blowing through, if the wind is over 30 miles an hour and it's a new moon, I can expect that there's water in the street and I may not make it down the street to my home. So I put on my waders and I carry my computer up here and I go home. When you live in Seabright, you kind of time your life around the tide. And sometimes you just have to go out during high tide, and so you're prepared. I used to make jokes about this. I was kind of proud of it, actually. It made me a real Seabrighter, because the fact is most people who live in downtown Seabright own these. They keep them in their cars, and this is what life is like for us. You know, we talk about cultures and living with water yesterday, and well, we live with water here too. And we want to be able to keep living here with the water, which is why the steps that we take in the days going forward are really just so important for us. I want to talk about Sandy, because really it's because of Sandy that put us here. I took office as Seabright's mayor in January of 2012, so I was in office for less than a year as mayor when Sandy hit. Luckily, I had spent 8 years on the town council, so I did know what I was getting myself into in terms of Seabright, but I never in a million years imagined that we'd be dealing with anything like this. We started watching Sandy when it was still Tropical Depression 18. We knew it was going to be bad. We had just gone through Irene the year before and evacuated, and were very fortunate to sustain little damage. Some homes did get flooded, but not much in the town was damaged and nothing was destroyed. So we started watching. We were preparing for Sandy. We thought it was going to be a regular hurricane, and then it picked up speed. They started calling it the Frankenstorm. A nor'easter appeared on its backside, and we knew we were in trouble. And so the governor declared a state of emergency 4 days before the storm hit. We immediately followed suit and issued an evacuation order, and we asked all residents to be out of town by 4 o'clock on Sunday when the storm came in on Sunday night. The aftermath of Sandy, when the water pulled back the next morning, has really just been nothing short of devastating to every single person who lives in Seabright, is from Seabright, or has otherwise a connection to our community. We had displaced all of our residents for at least 10 days. That's all 1,400 residents, and most of the residents in this community are full-time. So these are not second homes, seasonal homes. This is a year-round community. And so everybody had to leave. Of course, there were some stalwarts who wouldn't leave their homes. We told them that the first responders would not come and get them, but they chose to stay anyway. Thankfully, no lives were lost. But in the aftermath, we had some very serious issues that we had to deal with. We had 6 to 8 feet of sand piled in this main highway, and sand everywhere so that you couldn't even see where the highway was. We could smell that there was natural gas leaking and that it was a problem. So first and foremost, we had to get those roads cleared so that the emergency workers and emergency crews could get through. And then we had to find the gas main, which was buried under 6 feet of sand. And we didn't have heavy equipment standing by. There was no power. Cell phones weren't working. It was an interesting time. I'm really lucky that we have an amazing group of people who serve as elected officials here in Seabright, and you should know that every single one of us is a volunteer. We have day jobs, and this isn't it. But they pulled together in a way that is really just nothing short of inspiring. We had to, besides getting the roads ready, the roads clear, obviously our sewer systems were compromised. We had to get our sanitary sewer back online, our storm sewer. We had to secure unsafe structures and determine if buildings were even safe for re-entry. And this was before we could even open the town for the people to come home. So 3 days after Sandy, we held a public meeting at a local high school, and everybody came. And I had to tell 1,400 people that they couldn't go home, that I didn't know the status of their homes, that I didn't know when they would be allowed to get back in. I didn't know what the future of Seabright was going to be. And remarkably, this community still held together. Luckily, we did get them in. As soon as the roads were partially clear at the end of the first week, we were able to organize shuttle buses so that people could come in and at least see what happened to their homes, even if we weren't able to open up the town altogether. We called it grab and go. So on one day, we did grab and go to the north. The next day, we did grab and go to the south. And literally, the people rode the buses. They were allowed for 15 minutes into their homes to fill a bag, back on the bus, and out they went. They still held together. Luckily, we were able to open up the town for good at the end of week 2, and it was a massive coordination effort between the armed forces, utility crews, emergency responders, inspectors, FEMA, volunteers. It was nothing short of incredible. We were really fortunate because we had good mentoring. We were able to get adopted, so to speak, by emergency workers from the state of Mississippi. You know, they're used to dealing with hurricanes down there. They lived through Katrina, and so they saw what happened to us, and they dispatched teams from each county in Mississippi up here to help us out. So we called them our MEMA guys. Thank God for our MEMA guys. Because they got here and they knew what we needed before we knew we needed it. You know, things that we hadn't thought of. Where are people going to sleep? Where are people going to shower? How are you going to eat? You know, things like that as we were digging. You know, they're digging. And also, I was able to make a connection to Waveland, Mississippi's mayor, Tommy Longo, who was mayor when Katrina hit Waveland, Mississippi, which was ground zero for Hurricane Katrina. The entire city was leveled. And he has been a rock for me and a great person to go to for advice when I wasn't sure what to do or how to respond. We also were very fortunate in that we had Seabright Rising, which basically started out as a food effort. Our local restaurant here, Woody's, damaged by the storm, realized that they weren't going to be opening anytime soon. So the owner, Chris Wood, and his chef decided that they were going to help feed the emergency workers and the utility crews. And they collected donations, and they were prepared to feed more than just utility workers. They actually fed the residents once the town was open. And so for literally a month, you could get a meal at least twice a day, if not 3 times a day, at that firehouse. And they were delicious, prepared by a chef and volunteers from all around the surrounding areas. And because of that, our productivity was off the chart. Because you didn't have to stop work in the middle of the day to go find lunch 15 miles away. Lunch was here. And so I'm pretty sure that we were the first town cleaned up off the Jersey Shore. And I attribute that all to Seabright Rising. And from there, they established a legitimate foundation called Seabright Rising that to this day is providing direct relief to individuals with needs. To get a bill paid, a rent deposit, to buy a bed, for school supplies. They're still helping displaced residents to this day. And they even helped get a Grammy-winning band called Train here for a concert that we had all to ourselves right before Christmas. And some truly amazing things have happened that show the spirit of people. One thing that you have to know, for you guys who aren't from New Jersey has heart. Like you would not expect given our reputation. We have already logged over 50,000 volunteer hours here in Seabright. These are people who came in and helped our residents gut their homes, pull out their sheetrock, pull up their floors to help us move the 8,000 cubic yards of sand that's been collected on our sides of streets and in people's yards. It's really, it's been very, very impressive. We had over 33,000 cubic yards of construction debris. That pile was 3 stories high. It was really something. But now we are in this assessment phase, and I have to tell you that it's been excruciating, because we have to do something. So we have to determine what will it take to fix these things, what is the best way that we should fix these things. Some people question whether we should be fixing at all, and so recovery's gotten a little bit complicated, both on a municipal level and also on a personal level. The governing body was very proactive, and so when FEMA released the first set of maps, the advisory-based flood elevation maps, ABFE we call them, Seabright community adopted those maps as the maps right away and added 2 feet of freeboard to that, because we wanted to make sure that people had the best guidance possible when they started to rebuilding. The council also changed the building heights so that people who need to elevate existing homes are able to do so without violating the height ordinance. And they made some other changes, like allowing people to put a construction trailer on their property while they're rebuilding and things like that. So people who can are fixing their homes or their home. And when you go out and walk around town later, you can really see the value of construction codes. Anything that was built after 1996, when the new construction codes went into effect and the new constructions were built to the flood maps, for the most part, those homes are unscathed. Those people power washed their garages and went back, waited for their utilities to be reconnected, and they went back home. Unfortunately, a majority of us live in homes that are 100 years old, or some a little bit less, some a little bit more. And for those of us, we're still struggling because we're not sure what is the right way to do it. Whether do we knock it down and build a new one? Do we try to fix what we have and elevate it? Many are struggling with insurance and trying to get a fair settlement out of flood insurers. I know that's happening to my family. But we're very fortunate because we have a beach nourishment project happening on our beach right now. It's the Army Corps of Engineers is doing a beach renourishment project for us up and down the Jersey Shore. Actually, we're just very fortunate that we got to go first. Sandy proved to us, however, that just a seawall is not going to be enough. We're learning from international partners that we need a layered approach, we need an integrated approach, and so to complement what is happening out there already, our residents are organizing a dune grass planting effort to try to help anchor the sand that's there and to try to develop some dune protection in addition to the seawall. We're also working within the constraints of federal and state guidelines because there are rules on what you can and cannot do on your beach, and so we need to work within those rules as we try to protect our community as best as possible. Right now we're going through a long-term recovery planning effort with FEMA as a partner. We call it Seabright 2020 because we want to look with 2020 vision to where we want to be in the year 2020. And that is a citizen-led effort that is basically divided into 4 categories, and 4 subcommittees are going to make recommendations for our long-term recovery, for our waterfront, for our housing stock, for our downtown revitalization, and for our public facilities. And so that process will probably wrap up within the next month. Hopefully by the 1-year anniversary of Sandy, we should be looking at a preliminary report. We've also been able to develop some really helpful strategic partnerships along the way. I mentioned MEMA, Mississippi MEMA, but also FEMA and the Governor's Office of Recovery. As you learned yesterday, we are working with NJIT. We are also working with Rutgers Blaustein School of Public Policy. We did a partnership with Harvard Kennedy School of Business. They conducted a gap analysis for us so that we could understand the financial gap in between what it will cost for us to achieve a full recovery and what we have. The number is staggering. We also developed a partnership with New Jersey Future. And one of the really very instrumental parts of our recovery has been a partnership that we made with the Friendship Train Foundation. And that's a local private foundation out, they are headquartered out in Red Bank. But basically they have partnered with us to help develop community resilience. And so they established a Seabright Resource Center that provides case management for our residents who are trying to get home. They provide an information hub for all Sandy recovery information, grants, and also advocacy. They maintain a website. They help us with a newsletter. They provide email updates to the residents and are otherwise available are working with us to try to achieve our recovery goals. So these partnerships have been really key. But for all that, all this great stuff that happens, I'm still not home. 10 months later, I can't even imagine getting home at this point. My house is gutted and it sits while I fight with my insurance company and try to figure out what is the best course of action. And one thing that I have to say about New Jersey, we don't wait. We're not good at this waiting thing. Patience? Like, what is that? So it's been very, very difficult for us. Obviously, we have some serious issues with water. The next tropical depression to me feels like an imminent threat. And so on our riverside, we have the Shrewsbury River flowing up our west. We are protected somewhat by bulkheads. Those bulkheads are all on private property and they are of irregular height and irregular condition and quality. We do have submersible pumps on 3 of our streets in the downtown that have made a difference in removing fresh water during what we used to call nuisance flooding events. Less times that I need these. But that's just 3 streets. We did receive a grant to put in 6 new bulkheads and construct a pumping station also in our downtown, but it's not a continuous bulkhead. There are private properties in between these 6 bulkheads, and so until we get a handle on that, the bulkheading that we have lined up is not going to be effective for us. So we need to work on that riverside. On our ocean side, you can see we have our iconic seawall, but the seawall is also not continuous. We actually have a 1,300 linear foot gap in our seawall. The largest gap in the seawall is right here where our downtown area is, and that gap basically served to funnel that storm surge through, and that's what destroyed our commercial district, where I mentioned yesterday, 100% of everything on Ocean Avenue was lost in Sandy. And so that gap in the seawall is a very serious issue for us. Underneath the ground, I suspect that we also have infrastructure issues that need to be addressed. And we're dealing with what I would consider to be the endless bureaucracy of insurance and available programs to try to help us get these things addressed. Our finances are stretched. We have a $5 million annual budget before Sandy, and we had our credit downgraded because we had to go out for emergency notes. We borrowed $3 million to get us through the cleanup and recovery phase, but when your budget's $5 million, that doesn't really put you in such a good spot. We're lucky, very lucky, that there's federal programs to help us get through at least this year financially. There's a program through FEMA and a community development block grant program that at least helped us offset the loss in taxable income that we have. Because we had such a reduction in property value, our local government is collecting less in tax money, and so these federal programs at least are plugging that hole for this year. Our capacity, as you can see, is a little bit stretched. This used to be a gym, rec center for the children of the community. Obviously, we needed to take it back. Where these ladies here, this is our building department, which used to be Karen in a desk on the other side of the wall there. That was when the community was all built out and a building permit was rare. Now she's doing building permit after building permit after building permit. And so clearly, having the staff to be able to handle this recovery stuff has been very, very, very challenging for us. But one thing to consider, I think, to frame this discussion that we have about Seabright's recovery is a consideration of what our local culture is here. Seabright is basically a fishing village. It was settled in the 1860s. I would say the Seabright people would be described as hardy. Some would say we're salty. I would say we're fiercely independent. At one time there was a train that brought tourists up from Long Branch, and so inside that seawall there was a train track. And so Seabright was known as a place where people came to stay at hotels and resorts to improve their health with the seaside air, and that is kind of our legacy. That seawall that you see actually was built to protect the train. That seawall was constructed to protect the train line that used to run here in Seabright. So that's where the seawall comes from. The rumors, I don't know if it's true or not, that the 1,300 foot gap was because they ran out of funding and they were going to come back and finish it the next year, and their funding never materialized. I don't know if that's true or not. Now Reed's saying, nah, that's not true. I'm not sure any of us, that's one of the local legends. But you should know that this local culture highly values individual property ownership. And so concepts like redevelopment and eminent domain and taking of property are an anathema here. Or at the very least, they're greeted with extreme skepticism by our residents. So, kind of in one fateful night, Sandy pretty much changed everything and has caused us to take a very serious look at what we are, and is causing us to make some very important and long-ranging decisions on where we want to be and what this community is going to be in the future and in 2020. Right? So as we go along today, your thoughts, your ideas, your perspectives are really very welcome and appreciated by all of us.